Cocoon Spawn Girls. Chapter 32. With enough effort and determination, we made it to the end of the driveway of the old office. Collapsed and crawling with clone spawn, there were redheads fighting their spawn brethren. However, they seemed to be in a losing battle on every front. The girls lacked any strength or body mass that the white spawn that towered over them held, as well as the fact that in this stress-inducing fight, the girls couldn't keep themselves from transforming, but getting to shift into spawn and falling directly under Declare and his command. I scanned the fighters for any sign of Dawn or Roxanne. Would they be joining the fighting, or would they stay hidden for now? A pile of spawn launched upward into the air, answering my question. There beneath the blast stood Dawn, helmet cracked, blood dripping down her right arm, and yet seemed unfazed as she stood strong against her own creations. I knew she'd never turn out to be a one-trick pony. Her strength, clearly the work of years of training. She also seemed to be utilizing some sort of explosive device to be able to blast all this heavy spawn off of her. Looking at her, I couldn't quite figure out what it was, though. Dang, was Clarice's first thought as she watched the carnage of fighting. Even King seemed surprised by this development. Well, that's one way to overpower our enemies. I say we stay out of it the best we can. I don't want to get mixed up in the middle. I held up on my board. Stick to the tree line? Sure, we can wait. Plus, I don't see the other one. She was right. I didn't see Roxanne anywhere. I know her ability is being activated near non-stop somewhere, but right now we had no idea where she might be. I don't want either of us to end up on the other end of that crossbow. Better to watch for her and remove her from the equation ourselves if we get the chance. A scream grabbed our attention, one of triumphant and one of glee. Dawn stood over a spawn corpse, wielding one of the red balls in her hand, holding it up in the air in victory as blood trickled down from it, dripping across her face. See this? None stand equal to I. You can't think that trick will honestly ever stop me. She thrust the red ball into the pit where it had landed against the wall in front of Declarna. Her helmet screen glowed red. I am the dominant half of the magical girl duo, Artemis Bliss. She leaned her whole body back, screaming in the air. I am the Hound Hunter, Dawn, rank S+++. You cannot kill me. She let out a terrible screaming howl of pain and ecstasy. All that noise she was making only drew more spawn in. They came at her from all directions. Just as they were about to make contact with her, she leapt into the air effortlessly. The spawn crashed against one another below her as she landed atop them. She held her hands out to either side of herself. Appearing in them was some sharp bones that appeared to be chipped femurs. She struck them downward into the spawn pile beneath her, stabbing into the flesh of the spawn as they let out pained horn sounds. She released the bones from her grip and stepped onto them, crushing them deeper into the flesh below as new bones appeared in her hands, once again stabbing into other spawns before leaping atop these bones. Horns muffled as they died, more spawn charging in to face her. The ability to clone oneself. I underestimated how it could be used. To think she could create a clone of just her bones. But their chipped bone conditions said a lot about Dawn's current condition, moving so effortlessly while having at least one broken femur. It was commendable. She spun to face each spawn as they leapt at her, launching sharp bone fragments from her palms, striking into their flesh, sometimes not even halfway. This was the technique of a veteran magical girl. This was the results of years spent hunting inside time loops. Two spawn bit down on either leg, as a third leapt up into a surprise attack, slamming into Dawn's helmeted head. She fell backwards off her dead spawn pile, falling downward towards the pit edge. Suddenly, two red heads appeared from her sides, each striking a spawn with bone fragments. The spawn on Dawn's legs released her, allowing her to leap upward off them, saving herself. The spawn fell along with the two redheads, all disappearing into the pit before ending to a tune of a loud splat sound. Before Dawn had even fully landed, another spawn had already appeared, lunging towards her. She turned to face it, before it was all of a sudden knocked off course by the presence of an arrow in its side. Dawn and I both looked in the direction of where the arrow had come from, searching to see that pink-haired huntress. Took you long enough, Dawn said with a relaxed exhale. From the other side of the fight, Roxanne emerged from the surrounding trees. I can't help it if I'm constantly being affected by someone hitting the time reversal button. And one of these times you're actually going to reverse it, Dawn retorted coldly. Hi, Roxanne growled playfully. I'm not the one who's let her dog get taken away. Dawn was silent for a moment. Her helmet showed an image of 3 dots loading.
A calculation error.
A big one? Roxanne grinned. But have no fear. Your partner's here. Dawn's head leaned to the side, her mask showing a small, smiley face. I can always count on you to help me clean up a mess. Look, it never even happened? Another spawn leapt up from beneath the pile at Dawn. She didn't turn her attention from Roxanne as she punched it, knocking it back down. When we catch this intruder, let's make sure we give her a proper punishment for interrupting our hunt. Roxanne had already begun jogging down to Dawn. Let's give him one of the monstrous ripping tears, she said, leaping into the air with excitement. It was almost scary to see them so carefree amid such a dangerous battle, especially one which I had been sure was not going their way. And yet here they were, almost planning what they'll be doing once they win. I was sure Dawn was slowly losing bite by bite. I mean, her leg has 2 giant bite marks on it, and it's bleeding now. But it seemed like the moment Roxanne showed up, her mood was raised. It was as if she was sure, together, there was no fight they couldn't win. Roxanne loaded another arrow into her crossbow, and shot down another spawn, then reloaded and repeated. Slowly, she approached Dawn's building tower of bodies beside the pit. The remaining spawns still outnumbered them, 36-1 at this point. It had to be the entire army by now. The entire town was evacuated, and all the hunters were now gathered here in one spot. The redheads at this point seemed to be all dead or ripped apart by spawn opponents. It was just the 2 of them versus all of them. Their situation should be unwinnable, so why did their body language say otherwise? A spawn lashed around, thrashing its weight around. This one seemed different. Even from a distance I could tell. The most glaring thing was it had a mouth instead of one of those red balls. Its large, sharp, nail-like mouth opened wide as it thrashed around, charging up the pile of corpses straight to Dawn. I think I saw Dawn's mask make a winking motion towards Roxanne before she did something unfathomable. She charged forward, meeting the spawn's challenge? 2 sharp bones appeared in her hands. She held them out to her sides as she charged forward, leaning in as she met the spawn's sharp mouth. The spawn threw itself into a spin, thrusting forward with a drill tearing into the air as it came at Dawn. She leaped upward, dodging the set of teeth beneath her, but did not rise high enough to meet the upper set. In an instant she was gone, disappearing into the spawn's jaw. It had eaten her whole. It ceased its spinning as it landed atop the pile, letting out a large, horn-sounding howl as it stood victorious. Or so it thought. Blood sprayed outward from it as white, bloody bones tore across its flesh from inside. All at once it was split in 2, the top half not even aware of what had happened before it was tumbling off the pile as Dawn stood tall among the bottom half. More of the new type of jagged jaw spawn appeared to challenge her. 2 more bones appeared in her gripping hands, swinging at the first spawn to enter her range. Another came from the side and headbutted her, knocking her off balance, causing her to drop her bones as she caught herself, gripping onto the spawn and pulling herself back up. The next spawn was on top of her before she knew it. Not even creating a bone, she just held her hand out and then gripped it tightly. In the blink of an eye, she suddenly had an arrow held tightly in her hand. Had she caught it mid-air? I looked over to Roxanne, whose crossbow was now empty. She had begun fighting her way up to the pile to get to the top. Dawn swung the arrow down into her attacker, then with a swift kick knocked it over down into the pile. Dawn let out a screech as she stood tall atop the mountain. She thrashed around slightly as if in discomfort. Then, gripping her helmet, she released the lock on it. With a clatter, her light-up helmet dropped to her feet in 2 halves, her face free from the stuffy constraints. Seeing her for the first time without it, her appearance was so much more terrifying than I had pictured on it, based on the redheads. I could see where the mouth spawn got their teeth. Extending from Dawn's gums were long metal rods where teeth should be. She had some sort of device attached to her that was keeping her mouth open wide, enough for her rods to not be piercing her. Free from her limiting helmet, she let out another painful screech. The call of a predator facing another. A spawn fell just before her feet as Roxanne climbed off of it, removing an arrow from it. Together we stand as one? Artemis, shine your moonlight upon us, Dawn growled with her metal rod teeth. They stood back to back as they looked down facing the oncoming spawn. Together they must have felt invincible. Spawn clawed upward, digging into the corpses that made up the mountain. They thrust themselves upward with their sharp teeth gnawing at those on the top. Dawn sliced with her sharp bones as Roxanne shot arrows downward, covering the other side. The spawn continued to come at them as their numbers began to dwindle. They'd be able to at most knock against the girls, or leave a bite or 2. None of them were able to land any fatal wounds. Time passed in this odd way as time reversal was shaken back and forth as the 2 forces continued trying to take control of it. A large clone spawn buckled its legs as it leapt forward, shooting into the air, flying above them. Dawn and Roxanne looked upward, watching closely. It began its descent over them, crashing down, teeth wide and twisting into a drill spin as it fell. Roxanne fired an arrow, then another, but they were deflected, bouncing off the spinning target. Roxanne held her bone blades above her. The spawn crashed down over her as her blade sliced it. It hit the pile, falling into two halves as it fell, sliced in half by Dawn. As it fell into two halves, a smaller spawn lunged out from inside the first. Dawn was caught off guard and didn't have enough time to react. Roxanne grabbed her, ripping her back towards her. Dawn barely avoided the metal fangs of the spawn as it crashed into the pile, the two of them thinking they had avoided it before falling to land, instead falling backwards off the pile. What had happened? At first it wasn't clear, but then the horns started. Among the piled-up corpses were still living clone spawn, who were now sounding their horns. They shifted the rest of the pile with them. With their entire weight, the pile itself collapsed backwards towards the pit beside it. Dawn and Roxanne had no way to catch themselves. All Roxanne could do was attempt to reverse time, to no effect as they fell. "Come on, Soph, let's get closer," Clarice called to me as she took off running towards the pit to get a better view of what was going on below. It seemed safe enough with only corpses remaining up here, so I chased after her. Spawn corpses crumpled wetly upon the stone ground at the bottom of the pit, the still living ones unable to do anything but die as they smashed against the ground. Roxanne and Dawn took on defensive positions as they fell. Tossing aside the bone and crossbow, they instead leapt onto a dead spawn and began working to use it as a cushion for their fall. They crashed into an already mushy ground. The spawn they were on top of indeed took on most of the force, leaving them only shaken. But there was still the rest of the pile, plummeting down above them. They moved quickly to roll out of the way of the direct hole, moving deeper back. Corpses slammed down like raindrops against the floor, so many all at once that they nearly blocked the light from above for a moment as they fell. The one moment would be their ultimate downfall of Artemis's bliss. The two of them were barely mentally ready for the next attack, rolling across the stone ground as they moved away from the attack of fallen corpses, all while having so little light to see their surroundings. They relied so often on time reversal after making crucial strategic errors, they had perhaps come to rely on it too heavily. They rolled back, out of the way of the corpses, and right into arm's reach of B3's only resident. A chain brushed against Dawn's cheek. "Tag," a grinning voice sang. Dawn didn't have time to react with an attack. She could only instinctively kick Roxanne back, knocking her away, hoping for the best. There was a silence following this. The last of the spawn hit the ground, ending the avalanche of corpses filling in the entrance to the floor. Dawn would find herself on the ground, unharmed, but with two weights on either hand. As her eyes adjusted, Dawn finally noticed the green eyes staring down at her from above. Dawn leapt up to her feet, noticing immediately the chain sounds that followed her. She took up a ready stance as she faced her new dark-skinned opponent. "Careful there," Declarna said gleefully. "Who are you?" Dawn shouted. "What is this? What have you done to my clones?" There was a pained groan from behind Dawn. Roxanne stumbled up to her feet, followed by the similar sounds of chains following her. Dawn turned back to look at her. "Are you good?" Roxanne raised her hand towards her head to rub it, before suddenly ripping it back down to her side. What is this?" Dawn leaped back towards her, putting more distance between her and Declarna. "What's wrong?" Roxanne's eyes were darting around the small underground room, as if looking for something. "Sire, something is wrong with my arms?" she shuddered. "These chains? Where did they come from?" "It's some sort of attack, I'm sure," Dawn stated. "But I haven't figured out what they do. They aren't that heavy, so they can't be meant to slow us down." Roxanne looked stone-cold-faced at her partner. "Raise your arms?" "Huh?" Dawn reacted. Roxanne did nothing, and Dawn did as her trusted partner told her. She raised her arms slightly before being flooded with the overwhelming dread feeling that her life was suddenly in danger. Her arm shot back into her sides as the chain clattered about. "Well, ladies," Declarna said, stepping forward towards them, dragging her own chains. "Welcome to my curse. You've lost." Dawn and Roxanne took up defensive positions once again, only this time keeping their arms low to keep their chains dragging across the floor. "What makes you so sure we're done for?" Dawn scoffed. "If anything, now that we've found you, we'll have no trouble killing you. Declarna sighed. That response leads me to believe you've never seen these chains before. Would that be the correct assumption? No, we've never seen your stupid chains before, Roxanne shouted. Too bad, Declarna sighed again. I'd really hoped two old heads like yourselves might have met her before. Met who? Roxanne shouted again, growing more agitated as the shackles rubbed against her beautiful skin. The woman whose ability this is. Neither Dawn or Roxanne seemed taken aback or affected by this statement. Whatever these chains are, we'll have them off as soon enough, Roxanne leered. Declarna cracked a grin again, chuckling. If only it was that simple. Her head rolled along her shoulders as she thought. I want to see something cool. I want to see just how totally lost you are. Dawn suddenly swung at Declarna, nearly hitting her if Declarna hadn't dodged at the last second. Just get on with it. Show us your attack. Declarna chuckled again. All right. She turned to her side, looking behind her. Come here, Dusk. From the shadows, a clone spawn walked out. Its red ball swayed as it approached Declarna, taking a seat beside her. Yeah, that's right. Just keep attacking us with our own abilities, you thief. Roxanne spit at her. Actually, I want to return them, Declarna smiled. She looked back to the spawn behind her again. All right, Dusk. I officially relieve you of your duties. Please rest now. Roxanne and Dawn stared in disbelief as the clone spawn lowered its head and with its large front legs stomped down on its own red ball head. It repeated this gruesome act until it collapsed on its side. Declarna turned back to her guests, unfazed. Well, that's that. No more of your spawn are left, so please enjoy complete control of time reversal, all to your little selves. What are you, an idiot? A moron is what you are, clearly, Roxanne began, ridiculing. She turned to Dawn. What do you say? From the beginning? Or shall we go and leap back an hour before we even arrived here? Dawn was smiling now as well. The beginning is fine. Let's quickly slaughter our hunt, then return here to do the same to this witch. Coming right up. Roxanne grinned. She glared at Declarna one more time, angered more by Declarna's cheerful expression. Time jumped. Everyone was sent back, but not to where Roxanne had meant to send them. Roxanne found herself lying on the ground again, feeling a pain in her chest from where Dawn had kicked her. She stood up, seeing Dawn do the same. They both looked at each other, confused. Dust! Declarna was already calling out again. The clone spawn appeared again, watching Declarna as she gave it an approving nod. It once again killed itself via stomping. Well, want to try that again? Declarna asked, her head lying against her shoulder as she held her hands out to her sides, making a large shrug. What the hell? What are you doing? How? Roxanne screamed. No one has ever stopped time from reversing? Well, I'm sorry. I can't take credit for being the first then. Declarna smirked. I'm gonna come over there and wrap these chains around your throat until you're dead, and then we'll see how you can stop my ability, Roxanne screamed, stepping towards her. Just you wait. Oh! Hold on, Roxanne, Dawn called over. Roxanne paused, stopping as she was instructed, waiting to see what Dawn was going to do. Let's talk, shall we? Dawn proposed to Declarna. Sure, she smiled back. It's the chains, isn't it? That's how you stopped us from reversing time. It isn't me, Declarna shyly smiled. But yes, they are what are going to hold you here until you take your final breaths. Huh, Dawn reacted. She thought to herself for a moment before looking back up. So we're thoroughly trapped. Care to explain what happened? Why can't time reversal allow us to leave the timeline of where these shackles appeared on us? I'm glad you finally asked, Declarna grinned. Like I was trying to talk about before. These chains are the ability, or rather curse, of a certain magical girl whom I don't know the name of. She took a few steps forward. As you might have felt when you tried to lift your arms, after the moment they attach to you, they won't ever again allow you to live while those chains aren't touching the ground. She clapped her hands together. Pop quiz! How did you get down here? Yuck, Roxanne groaned. The hole? So, how can you possibly ever be able to leave in reverse? Declarna looked as if she was about to burst with glee, written all over her face. You don't mean... Dawn stared blankly. Yes, even time is forced to obey these chains rules. You can't go any further back than before you began to follow the rules and were touching the ground. Her chains began a shifting, clanking sound as she began to shake with excitement. And you want to know what the worst part of your trouble is? The curse is passed by touch. I touched you, clone girl, not time girl. You kicked her. You were the one who gave her the curse, not me. Declarina began to cackle with delight as their eyes dropped. I'm sorry, Dawn murmured to Roxanne. No? There was no way to know, she responded in a hoarse tone. But don't feel so bad, Declarina smiled. I would have gotten you pretty quick after. But then again, I suppose up until the moment of that kick, there still existed a timeline where you killed Dusk, and the reverse time before I could chain you. But whoops, not anymore. The mood turned grim as Roxanne and Dawn stood there in silence, taking it all in, coming face to face with the fact that they'd actually met someone who was the perfect counter to them in every way. What is your name? Declarina spoke up, looking at Declarina. My name? Declarina. I have been the sole prisoner of the Morrowsville branch for 3 years now. A pleasure to meet you. Dawn shook her head. I've never once heard of you. A nobody forgotten in a basement, and that too nails the coffin shut on Artemis's bliss. Declarina shrugged. I have to believe at least someone in MGI knows me, and why I got locked up here. But oh well. Thanks to you two, I think I'm going to make Morrowsville into a wonderful spawn den. In no time, MGI will seal it off and leave me to rule over it as my territory, only occasionally coming by to collect spawn for their purposes. We may be chained here, Dawn started, signaling something to Roxanne, but don't think we doesn't mean we can't still kill you. We've already gotten the curse, so we might as well slay you and take our revenge. Declarina chuckled the loudest yet. Wonderful idea! But there's one more name I need to run by you, Artemis Bliss, and I think you're going to know this friend of mine. Dawn and Roxanne paused their closing in. Go ahead. Artemis, you named yourself after her. I can tell you were both at least loosely aware of her lore. The goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, wild animals, childbirth, and so on. Getting to a point or stalling? Dawn hissed. Hold your horses. Jeez, Declarina rolled her eyes. Anyway, as I was saying, goddess of all those things, and then later, the personification of the moon. We know? Gah! Roxanne interrupted this time. Will you please shut it? This is kind of supposed to be an intense, epic moment. Please! Declarina seemed actively upset by their comments and groans. The moon, she began again. The moon is far from Artemis. They were so very mistaken, for I know someone who is very close to the moon, and she would take very big offense if she heard you going on about you proclaiming you want her moon to watch over you. Problem with our battle cry? What is this? Dawn began approaching again. She was done listening to whatever this was. Dawn charged at Declarina with a sharp bone in hand, making sure her chains dragged along beside her. Declarina leaned down and made a whistling sound with her mouth. A tiny spawn responded to it, crawling from inside her dress. Dawn thrust her bone blade forward, right at Declarina. It was centered and straight, a perfect hit into the face. Or it would have been, but Dawn froze. To the right of Declarina, on the wall, a weird goopy fluid portal had appeared. Lips appeared from inside and said, The moon, it sees you. It's looking right at you. Roxanne behind her was frozen as well. Both dropped to their knees as a voice inside their head whispered to them, The moon sees you. All at once they were frozen, locked in a swelling storm of fear as they could feel the eyes of the moon peering down at them through the upward hole. The spawn on Declarina's chest crawled back down her dress. She blew kisses as it left. On the wall, the lips retreated into the strange fluid, and then the portal disappeared. I looked down along with Clarice as we both watched from atop the pit. We both knew that power. That was the gift of a moon worshipper, Aurelia. I would recognize that voice anywhere. It made my blood boil as I could only continue to watch whatever sick master plan Declarina was cooking. End of chapter 32.